She didn't leave because you were cruel. She left because your cruelty wasn't beautiful enough. You were the mirror she couldn't break, so she searched for one that shattered. You smiled too early, forgave too fast, bled without poetry. And now, in the quiet hours when your messages rot unread, you wonder what made her chase ghosts more than you. But you forget a woman doesn't crave peace. She craves gravity. She wants to orbit a force she can't name. A man who walks like he's being watched by gods. A silence sharp enough to bleed her thoughts. Not a boy who praises her softness, but a beast who drinks her illusion and dares her to exist beyond it. If this voice already knows what you're hiding, let it echo. Like the video. Leave your trace in the dark below. Subscribe, and never smile first, because the one she dreams of isn't kind. He's inevitable. A woman only chases what reflects her chaos and bites back. She doesn't want peace. She wants to be exposed. She wants the scream behind her smile to echo in someone else's silence. She studies your face not to know you, but to see if it holds her own disaster cracked, reflected, lit from below. When she leans in, she is not asking who you are. She is asking if you can carry the part of her she hasn't dared to admit exists. Not the good girl, not the gentle daughter, not the clever prize, but the beast, the manipulator, the devourer. She wants a man who doesn't flinch when her eyes flash red beneath the mascara. A man who doesn't console, doesn't run, doesn't soften. A man who simply watches as if her most violent self is ordinary, deserved, expected. And when you praise her instead of watching, when you reward her good behavior instead of slicing through it with your gaze, she shrinks. She becomes obedient. Not because she loves you, but because you've made her forget herself. You've mirrored her performance, not her truth, and she hates you for that. Soft men make women feel insane, but the mirror with teeth, he never blinks. You are not the good man. You are the rupture, the interruption. You make her remember the rage beneath her rituals. You do not chase, you do not decorate her delusion. You hold still, and in that stillness, she sees a threat she can't tame. She tests you not to break you, but to prove you are breakless. She pushes, lies, provokes, weeps, hoping your silence splits her mask like glass. And if it does, she will crawl toward you like a moth to its executioner, because in that annihilation, she finally feels real. The one who mirrors her truth without flinching is the only one she can follow, but only if he bites, because reflection without danger is flattery, and she doesn't want to be flattered. She wants to be undone. You must become the man who leaves blood in her reflection. You are not her audience. You are the one who drags her back onto the stage of her own becoming. She is performing herself, laughing too loud, crying in patterns, controlling reactions like a conductor whose symphony is silence. But you are the dissonant note, the smirk that doesn't clap, the gaze that doesn't validate, the breath that says nothing because it knows. And that knowing drives her mad, because she doesn't want you to adore her. She wants you to see her, and she wants to fail in front of you. She wants to collapse, hysterical, manipulative, cruel, and for you to remain unmoved, not out of coldness, but out of understanding. As if her most violent edge is already familiar to you. As if she's returning, not breaking. This is why she chases cruelty. Not sadism, but indifference to her mask. Because a woman is a wound pretending to be a flower. And most men worship the petals, but you press your thumb into the bruise beneath the bloom. You do not fear her chaos. You match it. You do not react. You contain. She screams. You blink. She accuses. You yawn. She leaves. You remain not waiting, not begging, just there. Like a mountain she tried to move with a sigh. And when she realizes she has no power over you, she falls to her knees, not in defeat, in recognition, because power is the one thing she cannot pretend to respect. She either feels it or invents a lie to destroy it. And if you are real, she will test you until the end. Every insult is a question. Every threat is a plea. Can you hold me without losing yourself? And if you do, she will obey without knowing why. But the moment you explain, the moment you offer understanding, softness, closure, you vanish. You become knowable. And what is knowable cannot be worshipped. She will thank you and disappear. She will complement your communication, then drown you in her silence. Because the mirror that flatters kills desire, but the mirror that wounds her illusion revives the animal. And women only love from the mouth of that animal, not the girl, not the mother, the animal. And the animal only kneels to what is other, not similar, not safe, other. If she sees herself in you, she turns away. If she sees her chaos reflected and returned with cruelty, she submits. Because love is not built, it is torn open. You don't win her by being enough. You win her by being ungraspable. You show her who she is without telling her what it means. You reflect her darkness not with judgment, but with absence. No instruction, no interpretation, only your spine and the storm behind your silence. She must find herself in the emptiness you offer, not the affection. You are not a gift. You are a god she thought she'd imagined. The one who already knows. The one who does not forgive because there is nothing to forgive. She is not looking for love. She is looking for permission to be the thing she hides. And if you flinch, she becomes your enemy. The more you fear her chaos, the more she feels contempt. The more you seek to calm her, the more she inflames. But if you remain without praise, without fear, without flattery, she begins to chase, not you, herself, through you, because you are no longer a man. You are the portal, the confrontation, the answer she didn't want, shaped like a body she can't control. You do not argue, you do not explain, you mirror, and in that reflection, she collapses because for the first time, she is seen without illusion. She is seen in her war, and it is beautiful, but only if you dare to look without blinking, only if you become the mirror with teeth. She hears louder in the absence of praise than in the chorus of worship. You do not speak, and she starts to hear herself, not the version she performs, but the trembling beneath it, not the script she's memorized, but the pauses between the lines. When you withhold words, you become the frame around her chaos, and it begins to echo. You do not comfort, you do not react, you do not affirm, and suddenly, her reflection becomes unbearable. Because silence is not absence. Silence is power. It is what remains when meaning rots. It is the gaze that watches her perform and does not clap. It is the breath that does not rush to rescue her from her own contradictions, and that quiet it drills into her. It sharpens her hunger, because you are no longer an audience. You are the void, and she must fill it with something true, or leave. She tests you by craving your noise, but when you stay quiet, she begs through action. Her laughter becomes louder, her touch more deliberate, her stories more pointed. She dresses for your eyes, yet curses your gaze. She speaks in circles, but watches for your reaction like it's scripture. Because silence, in the hands of the strong, becomes a god, not an escape, a judgment. She wants your opinion, but only if it trembles her spine. And when you offer none, she trembles anyway. Because the worst kind of punishment isn't cruelty, it's indifference from a man who knows. A man who could speak but chooses not to. A man who sees but lets her writhe. This is not detachment. This is dominance without gesture. You are not cold. You are measured. You are not unavailable. You are precise. You know the weight of every word, so you leave most of them unspoken. You allow the air between you to hum with the tension she pretends she doesn't crave, because in that tension she is exposed, not in skin, in mind, in need. Her games falter when no one applauds. Her seduction collapses when you stay still, and that stillness becomes sacred. It becomes the place where she realizes she's been performing for men who always spoke too soon. And now, here you are, a man who listens with his eyes and answers with his absence. You do not chase her meaning, you force her to sharpen it. You do not reward her chaos, you make her sit in it. And she hates you for this, which means she respects you. A woman does not respect what submits. She respects what outlasts. You become the silence she fears most, the one that doesn't need her. The one that refuses to fill the space with sugar or noise. The one that breathes through her manipulations and blinks slowly. The one that never clarifies, never reassures, never begs. And in that space, her thoughts turn against her. Not because you are cruel, but because you are still like a hunter watching a deer walk toward him, unaware. Still like a storm waiting for the scream. Still like truth before it is spoken. And that stillness makes her unravel, because it holds no weakness, no approval, no vulnerability for her to grasp. It is the silence that swallows her power and reflects it back with interest. She is not used to men who survive her noise. She is used to boys who rush to solve her, men who crumble when she cries, soft faces who fear losing her and prove it in every sentence. But you let her leave and say nothing. You watch her collapse and do not flinch. You let her beg for answers and offer only the silence of a man who knows the end before it begins. And this drives her insane, because her entire world is built on the assumption that men fear her withdrawal, that she controls through absence, through drama, through rejection. But when she rejects you, and you do not move, her weapon dies in her hands. This is not a tactic. This is truth embodied. You are not playing hard to get. You are hard to reach. Not because you're distant, but because you're real. You have no need to explain your value. You have no hunger to prove your depth. You do not perform. You do not chase. You do not confess. And in that terrifying simplicity, she feels her illusion dying. You have not judged her, but she feels judged. You have not punished her, but she crumbles like she's been sentenced. Because women who test with words are used to winning, but a man who doesn't respond becomes the mirror they can't crack. And so she returns, every time, louder, softer, more violent, more sweet, but always returning. Because the silence dominates not through rejection, but through inevitability. You have no claws, no screams, no armor. You are just there, like a verdict, like an absence that reveals. And she will orbit that stillness until it kills her pride or saves her from it. Because no woman wants to lead a man. She wants to be led by someone she can't seduce, someone whose gaze burns but whose voice waits, someone whose silence isn't emptiness, but judgment wrapped in mystery. And mystery, to the feminine, is law. Because the moment she understands you, she controls you. But the moment you remain unreadable, you awaken her submission. Not the fake kind, not the obedient kind, the kind that crawls from her bones, the kind that makes her wonder if she ever knew herself before your silence. Because you are not quiet out of fear. You are quiet out of certainty. You have nothing to prove. And in that stillness, her storm finds its edge. Her chaos finds its gravity. She becomes a woman again, not a girl chasing attention. You give her back her reflection, but without praise, and that's what makes her chase. Not you. The version of herself she becomes around you. The clarity she feels when your silence strips away her scripts. You are not a reward. You are the absence of performance. And in that void, she finds her truth or flees from it. But either way, she never forgets. Because you didn't scream, you didn't beg, you withheld. And that is the cruelty she respects, the gentleness she fears, the dominance she was born to follow, the silence that dominates. What flees her grasp becomes divine, and she kneels to feel it vanish. You never slammed the door. You simply disappeared into a silence too permanent to question. No accusations, no announcements, just absence whole, holy, and untouchable. And that is why she looks for you in the faces of men who speak too soon. That is why your name tastes like regret when it slips from her memory uninvited. You never punished her, you withdrew. You became myth, a man not lost, but unreachable, not erased, but elevated. The only ones we chase forever are the ones who leave without making us feel wrong. The ones who vanish before we get to explain ourselves. The ones who withdraw with such grace it feels like a prophecy, not a wound. Because there is no power greater than disappearance without bitterness. You didn't leave to prove something. You left because there was nothing left to prove. You had no interest in being understood, praised, or pitied. You simply watched her fail to meet you, then chose the sky. And that choice burned her deeper than any betrayal. She can forget the man who fought back. She can forget the man who begged. But she cannot forget the one who walked away, as if she were never the center of his world because he never made her the center to begin with. You were the sun. She was orbiting what she thought she could eclipse. And when you withdrew, she realized there was never a shadow on your face, only her reflection blocking the light. The God who withdraws does not close the door. He lets her stare at it open, quiet, eternal, because the feminine soul is not conquered by touch. It is conquered by distance, not the cowardly kind, not the unavailable, the untouchable. The man who made her feel real, then stepped beyond her reach, not out of cruelty, but out of knowing. She was never meant to hold you. She was meant to witness you, to ache in the presence of a man who does not bend, does not break, does not need to be worshipped. A man who lacks hunger, and that lack is divine. She cannot beg him to stay because he was never clinging to begin with. He was full, and fullness is what haunts her, not rejection, but the knowledge that you did not need her to become what you already were. The God who withdraws does not withhold affection. He withholds submission to her chaos. She cannot command your time. She cannot bait your guilt. She cannot offer softness and expect reciprocation. Because you have no addiction to being seen, no thirst for emotional currency. You are not cruel. You are simply complete. And that wholeness makes you inhuman. Not in a monstrous way, but in a mythic way. You are not the boy she trained to obey with her tears. You are not the man who crumbles at the thought of being unloved. You are not the hero who dies to be adored. You are something else, something quiet, something sacred, something absent. And absence is where the feminine crumbles. Because she cannot command what is gone. She cannot touch what has transcended her games. She cannot scream into a silence that doesn't bleed. And so, she becomes small in her rituals. She dresses for someone who no longer watches. She posts for someone who no longer checks. She smiles at ghosts who never respond. And the haunting begins. Because you did not punish her. You did not explain yourself. You did not say goodbye. You withdrew like the sea and left her standing in the echo of a tide that once made her feel holy. You became memory without permission, and that memory corrupts her reality, because every man after you feels too eager, too available, too human. They love too loudly. They stay too long. They listen too earnestly. And none of it touches her the way your absence did, because they are men who need. And you were a man who left without needing to be missed. That is the paradox. The man who leaves without bitterness becomes the altar. She returns to you in dreams she never tells anyone. In prayers she disguises as laughter. In wounds she calls just a phase. But there are no phases in grief. There is only the permanent outline of what she could not destroy. She destroyed your warmth. She tested your silence. She pushed until she found the edge, and then she expected you to fall. But you didn't fall. You disappeared. You withdrew not as a strategy, but as revelation. You had already seen everything she could become, and it was not enough to keep you. Not because she was unworthy, but because you were not seeking worth. You were seeking truth. And when truth turned to theater, you stepped away. And in that stepping, she saw what she was. Not punished, not broken, but refused. And refusal, when it comes without anger, becomes sacred. You are not remembered for what you did. You are remembered for what you stopped responding to. You became untouchable because you did not flinch. You became unforgettable because you did not explain. And now, her dreams are filled with questions no man has earned the right to answer. Because you left them unanswered. Not to torture her, but because the answers were never the point. The point was your gaze. And now it's gone. And in that loss, she chases, not you, but the part of herself that felt infinite in your presence. The part that rose to meet your silence like it was judgment. The part that finally felt like a woman, not a puppet. You are not a man. You are a mirror too far away to break, a song that only plays when she stops talking, a god that demands no sacrifice and is worshipped for that very reason. You withdrew because staying would have made you small, and she will never forgive you for not shrinking. Which is why she'll never forget you, because gods don't slam doors. They disappear into the horizon and let mortals drown in their own questions. She lights a candle, but it doesn't flicker. Not even the flame dares to move in the room he once stood. The air feels watched, though no eyes remain. She smooths her dress without reason, touches her necklace like it's an amulet against silence, but the silence does not retreat. It expands. It presses against her skin like the absence of oxygen, like the memory of hands that never trembled. She wants to scream, but the only voice left is his, the one that said nothing, and said everything. It still echoes in her spine when the house is empty. She checks her phone again. Nothing. She posts a photo, lingers on the caption, deletes it, posts another. Her smile is beautiful, but hollow like a statue built to honor someone who never arrived. All her friends say she's glowing, but only she knows it's because she's burning. Slowly, elegantly, without a sound. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she stands before the door he never closed. Behind it, no apology, no goodbye. Just the knowing that he chose to leave while still being wanted. And because he never turned back, he became permanent, sacred, above her reach. She doesn't want him back. She wants the ache. Because in a world of weak men who linger, only a god who disappears can make her kneel forever.